Welcome to Mapua, brothers, and the occasional sister joining us today. That's the Mapua ferry. My father, John, he designed that and he built it with his own hands. It's the second one he's built actually. The other one I've got at home on the land. It's a houseboat now. Over there at Rabbit Island, that's where people go on their bikes and the ferry takes them across here back to the mainland. You get picked up on the beach and you get taken across. My father built lots of boats. The first boat that he built for me was when I was 5 years of age, and I was terrified to use it actually. It was a little speedboat. We lived in Abel Tasman National Park. It had a lawnmower motor engine in it, and he cut the top of the cylinder off and built it up. So it actually had a bigger stroke, because he was an engineer, a marine engineer. And he was a very clever man. He's still alive to this day, Dad, but he got robbed he's got a neurological problem, and his balance he falls over all the time, and it's terrible. His last few years have been robbed from him by pretty much a disorder which means he's trapped inside his body. I go and see him regularly, but it's been a terrible way for him to end up in his last few years, because his mind is completely still sound, but the body's given up. Well, actually, it's something from the mind. It's a balance problem. He just can't stand up and he can't focus his eyes anymore, and that's been his demise. And I guess one of the things is, we talk about having longevity, having a long life, but if you've got poor quality of life, do you really want it? This is a great place here in Mapua. Dad also had a part to play in designing this warfare, or the piece, the floater that come out. Although actually he was opposed to floater, he had a better idea. And being an engineer, his idea was better, but the majority of people didn't listen to him. And this one's done okay now. It's had a few problems, but the problems that Dad said it would have, but overall they've managed to mitigate those and make it good, and people can go about their business. Dad used to sit on that chair every morning with his coffee and his three mates, watching the world go by. I would often wave to him as I go down the channel here to go out and gather fish in my homemade boat, but Dad can't even get down to that seat now anymore. And in the jellyfish, they had a seat with his name on it, and every morning he'd come down here for a coffee, but he can't do that either. I can remember watching Dad about probably 12 years ago, and he was still there, and he was in his 70s, and he was coming up here with his oars in his hand, and there's these steps here, these three steps, and I watched him jump down the three stairs. He jumped down there, and he did it just with such ease, and I was thinking, geez, the old man's bulletproof. In his younger day, he used to be a really, really strong man. He actually won Mr. Tuhunanui competition. That was a bodybuilding competition, but he didn't do bodybuilding back then like they do today with steroids and testosterone and all the other juice they put in their bodies. He did it with hard work, and sometimes he'd do 5 hours a day in the gym. He used to be able to do the crucifix, where he'd hold himself with his arms straight out in either side in the rings and just hang, and his strength was incredible. He was also a really good fighter. He'd do wrestling and boxing, and he was a really good hunter as well. In fact, he was a man's man, my dad. He would be very, very, today, if he was plunged in today's world in his 20s today, he'd be quite extraordinary, because he did a lot of these things that we now today see people do with all the help of modern technology, but he did it by himself. He'd go hunting tahr up in places where people couldn't get to. He'd take mountain climbing equipment and ropes, and he'd always go with a rope and crampons back in the time when crampons weren't even a thing, things he'd make himself, and he'd get up to the highest places, alpine hunting, where other hunters couldn't even go, just by his sheer grit and tenacity, but also his knowledge of climbing the mountains, and he'd catch some big animals. He was an adventurous bloke in his day. He was a ranger at Abel Tasman National Park, and that's where I grew up as a boy, in Tōtaranui, when I was 5. And we did correspondence lessons because there was no school, and Mum would teach us, but I wasn't much of a student because I wanted to always be out on the beach or up in the hills exploring stuff and making boats and rafts and catching fish and the likes. And Dad was a incredible ranger. He did everything because he was an engineer as well. He did all the maintenance of all the machinery they used and the equipment and the boats. And later on he went to become a ranger in Fiordland National Park. And when he was a ranger in Fiordland National Park, again he did the same thing. He was on a boat called the Renown, and this boat was 55 foot long. It was a steel hull boat, and Dad completely redesigned it so they could land a helicopter on it, and he was down in the Sounds doing amazing work that it would take normally 3 people to do, because he was the marine engineer on his boat, he was a skipper on his boat, but he was also the ranger. So he was doing 3 jobs that would take 3 people. And eventually he got a deckhand, and that made his job a little bit easier. And finally he met this woman, and that woman today is my stepmum, Sue, and she's awesome. And Sue, he met her at Deep Cove, and he liked her, and he turned up with some blue cod in his hand and made himself known to her, and he made it so she got the job as his deckhand, so they could be together in his job. And he spent years down there with Sue, and now they live back up here in Mapua, and I see my dad regularly. I see him quite regularly and sit down and talk with him. And this is how life often goes for a lot of people. You have an incredible life, and suddenly it gets cut short with disease or something which has impacted on your health in a way that makes it so you can't do what you've always done. So I guess my message today, brothers, is while you've got your legs and you've got your eyes and you can see, make the most of it, because you can do incredible things with your life. Make the most of what you've got and use it to your best of your ability, and understand that any day you could lose your sight, you could lose your hearing, you could lose your legs. So while you've got them, get out there and use them. Don't waste a moment. Take every minute you've got and jump into life. Don't let fear stop you from doing the things you like to love, because my dad never let fear stop him. He went places people have never been and did things people have never done. And I'm down here this morning having a coffee with friends and just looking at the ferry out there and thinking, yeah, well done, Dad. That's only a fraction of what he's done in this place. He built the Mapua Boat Club. He put over 500 hours of his own time into that, and he built a lot of things for the community. He put a lot into the world, the old man did. Go steady, check on a brother, check on yourself, and have a great day. And I might punch out another video tonight. See ya. It's a beautiful place, isn't it? How blessed am I to be born in New Zealand. We're blessed. Land of the great white cloud, Aotearoa. Absolutely beautiful. See ya.